Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined in conversation by the lovely Molly Ellis. Molly is the wildlife artist behind the brand The Wild Felter, based in the south of Ireland. During this inspiring episode, we pondered how sometimes the most important thing isn't knowing the answer, but simply being prepared to ask the question. Molly shared how her love and relationship with nature only began in her 30s, but has now shaped her family, business and home, where she has utilised renewable energy, the rather unglamorous sounding post-consumer waste packaging, and created a haven for wildlife by allowing nature to take the lead in rewilding her garden. Well, thank you, Molly, so much for joining us today. Perhaps we can get started with you telling us a little bit more about how nature has been part of your journey in your life so far.
So thanks, Fiona, for having me. I was really actually excited about this because it's become so part of our life now, where we kind of stumbled along for so long and just kind of went, oh, I heard something, and followed it through. It's now become something that's just dominated our conversation at home. So I actually love talking about it because I think that once, like my family, once they fall on a little bit of what nature can actually be for them, I think it's actually addictive. So I love setting people on this path, so I love to talk about this. So I suppose I grew up in the city, surrounded by absolutely no nature.
Oh wow, amazing. That's great. I love it's nice to have someone who has found it sort of against all the odds, I guess, as well. Yeah,
I mean, I would have been in my early 30s before I would have been able to identify some of the most common birds, and I think people are shocked that this is a wildlife artist and she what, so I was like, yeah, like I always loved animals. And I would have thought that every kid comes along and knew that dock leaves cure nettle stings, and you make magic potions, and if an animal comes along, isn't that lovely? I just presumed this was it. And I grew up in the city, and any chance I could get out in the garden, I was making magic potions, like everyone in the 80s. What we did, because there was no YouTube. And the nearest thing to wildlife was the local university, UCC, which had a nice river and a little bit of trees around it, and that was it. Very fortunate enough that cousins of mine and friends of mine lived out in the countryside, and it was very typical of us to throw on a pair of shoes, like not even wellies, a pair of shoes, a backpack, and be sent down in the stream for the day. Okay. And you would walk for miles in the stream with your lunch in your bag and go for it. I mean, like, to think of me sending my 6 or 7-year-old out now, go off in the stream there for the day,
Yeah.
And this was it. And it was like, I remember going blackberry picking for the first time, and I went, what's this? You make jam out of this?
Yeah.
And I came from a house where this wasn't the normal. We were very much an urban family. And I think what happened is I had a love naturally of animals, but my introduction to nature was so memorable because it was so different than my own life. So if as a child in the city I came across a bird that had fallen out of the nest, or an urban fox, I just couldn't walk past. I couldn't. And that never left me. And animals became something really important in my life, for my own mental health, for my own sense of self. So I went to art college, and I always had a dog, and I was living in a flat, and I had a dog, and I had to walk the dog every day because I was in a flat. And I'd walk in the city, and I was living in the loch, and the birds were there, and I'd go, the bats would be there in the evening, and I just always was like, the bat, because I have curly hair, and the bats at dusk would flick off your hair, and instead of being freaked out, I was like, I better wear my hair down when I go for a walk. So, and it was just these moments, and life went on. And I think in my late 20s, I just said, I want to be in the countryside. I want to be in the countryside. I'm done with urban living. And I didn't really understand farming and monoculture, what many people talk about. I just wanted to be outside. I wanted to be by the sea, by nature, the roar of nature. And I just knew it was healing, and that any aspect I'd ever dealt with is I knew it needed to be around me and I needed to be around it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I left my career and I set up being self-employed artist. And I moved into the wilds of Kerry, where I met my husband. And he's very technical, and grew up around that beautiful raw landscape his whole life. And he loved seeing it in dramatic phases. But I suppose I showed him something different and he showed me something different. And so yeah, it all came quite late, and that's actually exciting that I wasn't born into it. It wasn't this something that it just actually followed me and I followed it. And I think that's really good, because that means you can start at any time, and it can actually, at any time in your life, you can stop and go, actually, no, this can actually change me. I think that's actually exciting. You hear
that's amazing. I think that's important as well, because I think sometimes people feel like if they haven't done something all their life, or they haven't done something in their childhood, it's too late and they can't. And actually, it's really inspiring to hear that you had this sort of connection with animals, but actually you've jumped in with both feet and everything your whole life is, and it's now such an important part of your life as well. It's really inspiring.
It actually changes how we get up in the morning here. You were asking me about the garden and stuff, and I suppose before that, we were living in Kerry and we loved it, and we just couldn't stay there for various reasons, family reasons. And when we moved back to Cork, we were renting, and we rented in North Cork. And North Cork, if you've ever been, has Donnereal Estate and just woodlands and forests and walks and rivers and reserves. And we were just bowled over by nature here, and we said, right, we need to find a place that has a bit of that. But some of the reasons we needed to be near a motorway. We needed, economic reasons, services reasons. So we were very lucky. We found a 1-bedroom house, and at the time we had one child and we were planning another, and we found a 1-bedroom, €200 cottage in North Cork.
Amazing.
Within what's called a postage stamp house, which is where the cottage is on the corner of an acre.
Okay. Yeah.
Shy acre. And we're kind of in a lovely farmland area. And so we got that and we moved in, and we had no money for a long time. And baby 2 came along. We lived basically in a 1-bedroom house for 3-4 years and saved.
Oh, wow.
So even though we've been here a few years, the re-wilding of our garden has kind of only happened in the last 18 months, and nothing got to do with COVID. We just needed to build an extension. So, we knew we had this we moved in, and there was actually a little bit of this. We're very lucky. There's a mature native hedge here and some lovely trees. But we knew we had to dig up for septic tanks, extension. We couldn't live in a 1-bedroom house, but also it was heavily reliant on fossil fuels. Okay. And so that's where my husband comes in that, he's tech, he's all about tech, and he would have done a lot of research on climate change, where I was like, oh no, nature and me, and climate change hadn't actually made those two leaps for me yet, or him. And he was more technology and climate change, and I was more, nature and animals. And we were on fossil fuels, and we had to change that. And we came to this crunch where we were moving in here, there was fossil fuels here, we needed a new car, and we went electric. And it was a time no one was going electric. And I kind of looked at him, and he said, this is where I want to go. I think this is actually really important about climate change. And I would go for it. And I didn't really care, I was really happy if you go for it, and we moved in here, and we had to replace the boiler. And we said we could, but we weren't ready to extend. And I think this is why I'm kind of going on about this, is we had a point where we had saved for what we were going to do.
Yeah.
But if we had put in another oil boiler, we were stuck with that for the next 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And yet the grants, especially at the time, wouldn't allow us to put in a heat pump because it was not going to be efficient. And so we had to pull the full whack, and we had to make that decision, knowing in 2 years' time we would have been ready, but it would have been too late if we couldn't live without heating for 2 years. So we put in a heat pump, and we were very lucky. We capped it off. We oversized it for what we were going to build. And we put it in, and we made it work for ourselves. And we had an electric car. We had no solar. We weren't on light rate. We made it work for ourselves. And we had made those decisions. And my husband Shane was talking about climate change. I was talking about nature. And we just knew that we had an opportunity to make a stand within our own lives.
Yeah.
And that was really when it just went insane for us. And we went, what if we could decarbonize our home? What if we could decarbonize our life? What if we looked at the garden and rewilded it? What if we could grow our own? And all these questions. And we have 2 young children and we both work. And what does this mean for us? And we had no answer. So we built an extension. We still have done nothing, the old part. We put in massive solar panels, which we didn't have any money really. So we put in the wiring, and we had it, and we saved, and then we put in the solar panels. Do you know what I mean? We put in all the mechanics. Do you know what I mean?
I think, and that's I mean, that in itself is quite an achievement in like your commitment to it, and being like, okay, it's not something we can do now, but it's something that we want to aim for, and you prioritize saving up for it, and then at the moment you could, you put it in, and that's also
I suppose I'd like to point out, we have a porch that's so drafty in the old part. We just have that green air tightness tape taping it off because we have no money to fix it, right? And because we had made decisions what was important. And the old cottage, we have touched nothing. The place isn't painted. We're like here for 2 years. This is not where our money has went. We made very active choices to have the fundamentals of where we live correct. If it's not pretty, that's fine. That was good with us. If we don't do it now, we're stuck.
Yeah.
So I think for us, what came is, if we don't do it now, what will 10 years look like? We can't go backwards. So we have this tiny crawl space in the extension. So the wiring had to go in. It wasn't a proper attic. It had to go in. Obviously we had an electric car. We wanted to go second one, but we had zero money, and a family electric car at the time was crazy money, and secondhand didn't exist.
Yeah.
And actually a year around now, probably next week, a year, I picked up a 191 electric car that was affordable for me. In that, what I was paying on diesel was the same as my loan for the car.
Oh, okay.
Except I got a 2-year newer car that was higher end.
And then by this time you had your solar panels on your house, so
yeah, I suppose we had done a summer of solar panels where my husband was taking his electric car to work. We'd all the solar. I get a text message, turn on the washing machine. We've got all the solar, and I had a diesel car outside. So we were like, what if we had an electric car taking that? So it kind of all catapulted. And I'm going to revert to it a bit, because it's about nature. And I suppose we can say we've decarbonized. That's fabulous. It was not this full-on plan. It was, oh no, we need a boiler. What do we do? And we thought, well, if we do this might work. And we Googled and we YouTube. And then it was like, well, our car's terrible. What do we do? Well, we can go for a hybrid or a plug-in or whatever. What does that actually mean? Or we can check out YouTube and podcasts and go, what would the finances look?
Yeah.
Is it the same money? Okay, I have to spend €1,000 in 2 months' time to put a new something in my diesel car. I could take that €1,000 now and know that if I'm servicing an electric car, it's only 140.
Yeah.
So we made financial decisions as they came along, and we used the savings. So we are now, after 4 years, decarbonized. I can list 100 flaws, but we did not go on January and go, that's it, we're walking in, it's all perfect. We have done this. We've certainly done it backwards. We've certainly done it wrong. We've certainly done it, on YouTube. But like the main thing is we stumbled, and that's fine, because we're so proud that we're managing this, and we made do. And I think that's okay, that there is a culture at the moment of not making do. Everything has to be, with a big bow on it. And I think that's okay not to
be perfect. It's about doing, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's about doing what you can do, and at the time that you can do it. And you can't necessarily do everything all at once, all in one go, but you can do.
But it doesn't have to be perfect either. It doesn't have to be perfect either. It's okay that it's not perfect. That's because you're actually just trying something, and it takes people to try things. And then you get that information, you pass it on to the next person, and they might do a better job than you in 6 months' time. Go, hey, I found this thing, you might like it. That's really cool. And one of the things I found on this journey, which is unique, is every person who has done something like this is obsessed with talking about it and sharing their knowledge. So you will get people who are just so happy to share it because it's been a journey. They're so happy. They're really eager because, like, I mean, you can go on Twitter, right? And anyone trying to put their head above the parapet on the environment is just getting slated, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't respond and spend 3 weeks just looking at the comments, you will realize there's no need to respond because you'll never win this argument.
Yeah.
And if you step back and go, I don't need to prove this to you. I'm doing this for me because I'm doing this. I don't need all the facts and stats. I don't need to remember them. I don't need to prove the payback. I'm doing this because I feel it's right. I've researched. I haven't had a spreadsheet, although my husband might. You know, and I know that what I'm doing is probably the best that's available for me right now. Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's important, isn't it? It's just to do the best you can. Yeah. And then in the future you might find something better, but you've done something in the interim, isn't it? That's the difference. Is you've taken some action, even if it's smaller or less perfect or whatever. It's you've done something, and that in itself is empowering, and it takes you down this path. And like you said, you meet other people and they give you other ideas, things you wouldn't even have thought of or considered. And it just becomes a fascinating journey, doesn't it, that you embark on.
It's a lovely journey. It's one of reawakening. I really feel that, you know, you can go out and just feel that you've achieved something and be proud. And I mean, you know, myself and my husband, we'd often talk about that, you know, going, you know, like, you know, you don't, you know, go, well, I did this. It's not that. It's like, I've actually done something that we're proud to raise our children in, that we can say, you know what, we've trained them that we try not to buy plastic toys or whatever. And, you know, I know we're in, you know, toy shops and we get some funny looks because of what we say and whatever. Yeah. I go, I'm okay with that because we've actually kind of, we're teaching them as they grow up that we're trying our best, and that's okay to try your very best, you know, and we're proud that we're trying our best, because I would want my children who try their best to be proud when they've achieved something. So why shouldn't I be proud that I've achieved it? But we were talking, Fiona, briefly, you know, I feel that nature and the environment is so circular, and life is circular. And, you know, in my love of animals, it always gave me deep healing. And, you know, self-employed and managing, and we were doing all these projects and these conversations around the dinner table. And I started going, well, that's kind of cool. You know, I'm kind of powering my studio from the sun today. You know, I'm going to say that to customers. That's really cool. And actually, years ago when we were renting on, my husband built a small wind turbine. Oh, and I remember we have this photo of him on top of like a demolished shed, fixing the wind turbine the day before we got married. Obviously trying to get out of the wedding by breaking a leg, but and we used to have to, anytime we do maintenance, we had to bring our other friend who really liked wind turbines down, because we needed a third physical helper to come down for wind turbine maintenance. We had this inverter, and we used to run my old studio off it as a mad idea, you know, and it was like crazy stuff. But this was his tech, and I was like, I love this. Oh my God, I'm sewing on solar, you know, or wind power. So it was always that novelty and playing around factor. And then when we really set up here and my studio is run, you know, and it's decarbonized, I went, this is actually something I want to tell my customers, is that when they're buying off me, they're buying off, you know, a factory, my kitchen, that's decarbonized. That's actually kind of cool. And I had always kind of been into like biocello and alternative cello. And I started kind of looking how I could improve that. And I went, well, I use this white backing board. I don't think that's very good. I wonder what's better. And I found post-consumer waste stuff. And I was like, I'd never heard of what post-consumer waste is. Because if you go into any shop, you're never going to hear, this is post-consumer waste.
It doesn't sound very glamorous, does it?
You know, it doesn't. And it's brown, mottled, you know, and you know, a maker once told me, like, the brown paper reminds her getting her chips when she was like 6, you know, in the 50s. And I was like, you know, for her it's cheap and, you know, whatever. And I thought that was fascinating. I said, you know, there's this whole thinking on the aesthetic, you know, what is an aesthetic? And And anyway, I started to stop producing my tags on normal paper. I started insisting on recycled paper, post-consumer waste, biocello, started getting really good contacts, started ringing suppliers and going, can you get this? And they're like, well, we might actually get that printed for you. Like, I couldn't get paper fragile tape. Yeah. So Ecoland in Dublin started producing it and selling it.
Oh,
so
wow.
Now you can buy paper fragile tape because I annoyed much. Again, like, and they were like, that's really, why can't we get paper fragile tape? Yeah. You know, because they had their own tape printed and I thought it was lovely. I said, can I not buy one without your logo on it? You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And like, I'm a small maker and I can just ring a company and they can produce it. And I'm like, this is crazy. Does this all it takes is a phone call?
I think that's really powerful, I think, isn't it? Because I think sometimes there's this sort of feeling that as an individual we can't do very much, and actually sometimes we don't try as a result, do we? And I think from that story it's like, actually, you know, sometimes if it's as simple as just one person having the thought to actually ask rather than just saying, oh, I can't get it. I
kind of emailed every crafter I knew and said, please annoy them so that you buy off them so they know there's a demand, because obviously they've done me a favor by producing this, you know. And that's the other thing I found is I had found that company because of a beautiful artist called Cyril Riley, who I had bought a print off, and she had this beautiful backing board. And I emailed her, I said, you don't know me, I bought a print. What's your backing board made out of? And she said, post-consumer waste from this company. Yes. I went, thank you. Do you know, she just shared that information. Yeah. And that goes back, is every person who's trying their best is so eager to share the resources because we want it to become mainstream. We want it to become easy because we know the struggle it is to get it there, to find that information, but also they're the underdog, and the Irish love the underdog. You know, so it's like, let's get this out, you know. And there's another beautiful artist, Ina Farrell, and she does lovely forests and landscapes as well. And I mean, I think we email each other constantly going, did you see that new recycled, you know, paper? Is that really environment? And we have those chats. Because it's kind of a nerdy topic in our industry, in the craft industry, where you can get these supplies, what is ethical, what isn't, and it's, you know, so boring to the majority of people. But we have found this hub that we can talk and go, you know, I found something, you're going to be really excited by it, it's paper, you know. And it's like, you know, and surprise, and it should be an industry where it's cutthroat and competitive. We're both artists, you know, who happen to do wildlife, and, you know, but we're not, we're sharing. And I think that, again, I think that's incredible. That community is incredible, you know. And I think environmental communities are like that, you know.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think it's you know, community is really, really important. And I think you know, it's like, you know, individuals, small people, small businesses coming together, you know, you can all lift each other up, and it's not this sort of cutthroat dog eat dog, is it? It's actually, you know, there's enough for everyone, and actually by working together you sort of empower each other, and you make the differences that you want to see. And it is, I mean, I love buying from like local artists and smaller businesses, because I think they often do put the values that are important to them, and then you can align with them at the core of their business, and they take the time to do, you know, to research these things and find these alternatives. And, you know, and one of the frustrations that we do have is these sort of large corporations are really dragging their feet on it, and actually, you know, buying local, finding artisanal brands, that can be the solution to it, can't it?
It can, it does. I mean, the more you dive into this addiction of, you know, trying to do, you know, what you can, you actually do go, come here, what are they doing? You know, why is it taking them 10 years to commit to something, not even promising? In 10 years' time, we'll sort of gotten around to it. And I'm like, seriously? Like, you know, it took me a phone call, you know, like it's not that hard. And, you know, we're talking about packaging and coming around, and it's a bit like the garden came and we had that robot lawnmower, and we had it on the highest setting to leave the daisies, and we thought we were great. And then we were digging it up to do the extension, and I said, I'm going to have to reseed it, and I'm going to buy native lawn seed to the grass, and I'm going to put that down. And then I went, what happens if we don't plug in the lawnmower? and there was silence, you know, at home, and he was like, all right, oh yeah, well, fair enough, you know, it was grand. And then suddenly we had a rewilded garden. I was like, right, how do I Google rewild your garden? Because I didn't know. It was just, what happens if we don't don't know, you know, what happens, you know?
Yeah.
So we had seeded and then I kind of wanted some prettiness. So I was like, I'll just do poppies in one corner because it's bare. It's, you know, it was easy. I didn't have to dig anything up. So we did that and that was beautiful. And then someone said, oh, you know, you can dye things with poppies. I was like, no, that's fascinating. Oh, I used to love picking fuchsias as a child and mashing them up. I have kids, they'll love that, you know. Yeah. And then Brexit, and I was buying jewellery boxes in from the UK. And I went, that's a lot of shipping. I wonder, and it comes with this foam and I don't need the foam. I don't use the foam. I take it out and I dump it. And God, that's silly, isn't it? How can I package earrings? I can put them in bags. Bags are a bit boring. What if I bought cotton bags? What if they were organic cotton? And what if I hand dyed them from the garden? Isn't that a crazy idea? What if my kids did it for me? Great, you know? So I think I'm going to rewild, but in that corner, I'm going to do poppy seeds and we're going to gather them or we're going to crunch them up and we're going to figure out how to do solar dyeing. And I was like, oh, that's a bit crappy. And like, because you put them in and you have to turn them every day and then you forget for a week and it's a bit smelly. And so I was like, oh, I went down to someone, I found this big aluminium pot and I bought a book and they were like, aluminium pots are great. And I was like, kids, we can throw things in this and pretend to be witches, you know? And it was like, they were like, brilliant, Mom. And I was like, fabulous. I was going to roll his eyes. And you know, there we are, we're dyeing bags. So now all my jewellery is in hand-dyed bags from, you know, my wild garden. And then yarrow came up naturally and someone said, yarrow is amazing all year round for dyeing. I was like, fantastic. So now we have yarrow everywhere. And then where I grew up, then they're doing a dye project and someone had yellow dyer's yarrow, it's called, and tansy, and which I didn't have. So they're like, come out and help us weed for the day and we'll give you some dyer's plants. It's like, fantastic. So now I'm starting to garden as opposed to rewilding, but dyeing plants, you know, and herbs. I have herb garden because it's just for cooking. So then we got offered a polytunnel. So we built a polytunnel. So now we've only literally got it up. So we've got tomatoes in there and a few bits. So now we're trying to grow. No experience, you know, except the odd spud. But so, you know, we're talking about the circular bit. And so I went from, you know, the house, the extension, I had to, the decarbonising, which then more went, okay, well, then I need to put a native lawn in and I don't want to really cut the lawn. And now then I want to grow certain flowers to dye packaging. And now I'm gone back to the packaging that I thought I had done with, that I was really happy. Like, what if there was no packaging at all? You know, because so then a pop-up went on the website. Please click here for minimal packaging. So if you buy a mug, you don't get a box because the box goes in the bin. You know, you choose.
Yeah.
What if I choose? What if I just disrupted that again? So it's never ending, but it's fantastically never ending. So I have spent now the last 3 weeks scratching the head going, what would minimal packaging look like in a shop? Because they're a different entity than online.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer, right? Please send in all your answers to. But I'm really going, okay, I'm really happy with this. This is as minimal as it can be, protective. But there's other items that have a box, and boxes are king in shops. But what if I didn't have a box? How could I make that king? How can I stand out? And I don't know the answer. I don't know.
But you're asking the question, and that's part of the battle, isn't it? Is actually just asking the question, just putting it out there. You know, just even just ruminating it on yourself or other people having ideas, and it's and
price, you know, prices have gone up for materials, and if I can reduce materials, then thus I can keep costs, you know, down. So it all goes around and around. And I think I said at the start, you know, we made financial decisions. Always when we got an electric car, we had to financially make sense. And the things we've done have always made sense. So even rewilding garden, I obviously don't have to import and pay import and custom fees. You know, I'm doing something that's a bit more labor intensive, but it's the thing I can do with my children. So I'm not saying it's, you know, if I had no kids at home, would I want to spend hours doing this? It's a great way to get out in the garden, you know. I don't know. I quite enjoy it. It's related to my life. And my kids are kind of on the school journey now, and I really want to start talking about nature and teaching this in schools. And I reached out to someone, I think it's the ISSN network.ie, ISNSSN. I reached out to someone and he was like, absolutely, we go into schools, we teach this, we have people who can go and meet you. I'm like, they're not even in school, right? Like yeah, I have to kind of approach that. Yeah. And he said, all you need is a champion. And that really stuck with me, is like, if you just have one person to champion it, you can change a whole organization. So like we have a shop, there's a bunch of local makers, and we have a shop, and it's called the Blackwater Valley Makers. And I do all the ordering. So I don't order any bubble wrap or sellotape because I refuse to. And that was it. I said, no, here's lovely brown and white tape. And they're like, no one wanted else to take on the job of ordering. So done, we have a lovely eco policy. And that eco policy is Molly refuses to order plastic-based items. That's it,
but it can be as simple as that, can't it? You know, this is the thing. Like I think there's a tendency to overcomplicate things, isn't there, as well? And actually just do what you can and start where you are, and it can be as simple as that.
It can be as simple as, I'm in charge of that, I'm just going to change it, and I just think it's and then I said, like, I reached out to that gentleman Cody on the ISSN, and he was like, absolutely, when you're ready, shout and we'll give you a help. I mean, it was just a Twitter like private message, and I was like, because just people just so want to help, they really want to help. And I just love that. I love that feeling. I've had people come up to me, how did you rewild your garden? I said, it's really easy, you just do nothing. You're like, sorry, what? I was like, yeah, you do nothing. And for your kids, there might be nettles. I said, I know, they've not yet stung themselves because they know what a nettle looks like.
Yeah.
And they're fascinated by this. And I said, it's about kind of 3/4 of an acre of wild, and they have, like, those battery cars for outside, and every year we change the path, so it's like a racetrack. So it's never just that, you see those beautiful rewilded fields and it's that straight line, which is really poetic. Ours is not like that. Ours is like
meandering.
It goes around the swing set, around the trampoline, around the polytunnel. But every year it becomes a different garden for them, which I think is fascinating. And then we have a tree house built out of old pallets, and we have the yarrow overgrown there, and we have put scrap wood and tree stumps, so they have to beat off the yarrow to get to the treehouse, because it's this like 4 meters of jungle for them. And it's so now they're like, so when they jump in the trampoline, it actually looks like they're jumping in a big meadow, which is fast, and there's nettles around it. It's okay. It's actually,
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, I mean, I'm not that old, I'm 40, but I remember from my childhood, we used to go out and you'd get stung by nettles and you'd get caught on a thorn, and you survived, didn't you? It was like, it's part of nature, and like you say, and you get stung by a nettle and you try and find a dock leaf, and
isn't that the excitement? Isn't that the excitement? And we find moths here all the time, and my kids are so sick of me finding moths that I might find a hibernating one, and we have a little spot in the shed for them, and then every time I go into the freezer in the shed, I get to see them. And I'm like, guys, what is? And my 6-year-old, oh, mommy's found another moth. So normal. Mommy's so excited.
But I mean, that's beautiful as well. When you talked earlier about your own experience in the city, and now like the sort of circle the journey you've come on, that your children have just got this like completely different experience and exposure to nature now, thanks to everything.
Kids, when we have play dates and we have long grass, obviously it's the best hide and seek, and every kid loves it. Every kid loves it. And I used to trim it once a year, you're supposed to cut it, but then we got hedgehogs, so then we had to set up like a doorbell camera to catch the hedgehog eating. So then we had to wake our children in the middle of the night to see the hedgehog. So then I couldn't strim. So then I had to get, I can't remember, what's that, a scythe? Is it scythe or something?
Oh, a scythe, a scythe, yeah.
Because you see, this is not in my vocabulary going, oh, what is this, like the Grim Reaper, Hello, neighbor, So now I have one of those things that I can't pronounce, and I'm there hacking it away going, I don't know what I've been doing. And I got this fantastic comment on Instagram. They're like, and will you leave it really natural and leave it grow and dead itself, or will you cut it down once a year? And I was like, well, I don't have anything to naturally graze it.
Yeah.
But I also don't have really great hips, so I can only get through about a third of it at a time.
It's really hard work siding, isn't it? It's like
So,
very, very hard work.
so like, if you look, I get about a third done every 2 months. So I could really say, well, I always leave a bit for nature, but actually it's my back is killing me, because I've done about a third of it out of frustration. And I'll get like a third done in like 2 days and I'm delighted and I'm like gone for 2 months.
Yeah.
So it's not a science, I can see there's some yellow flower. I must go down and it's coming up that I've never seen before. Absolutely the wildflower lawn I seeded. There's almost like 2 areas in our garden where one was dug up, so I reseeded, and one was what was there. Actually, what was there is slightly nicer. I don't know what the genetically modified grass seed, when it flowers, is actually stunning. Stunning. The native stuff is kind of small, high, small. It's finding its feet still. It's going to take 3 or 4 years, but there is stuff coming up that I did not sow. And there is a massive amount of new stuff coming up every year. And that's the one thing about rewilding is if you put down the flowers, they're the first splash in year 1. Year 2 is going to be so boring for you because it's just going to be grassy, and it actually kind of takes the 3rd year and you'll start seeing like, the lesser trefoil, and you'll see, and all those lovely little things like self-heal, and they're tiny, they're gorgeous and fumitory, and these are just, and you have to actually look to find them. And when you look, you find insects, and when you find the insects, you find other things. We have a barn owl coming to visit. We've lived here 4 years. The barn owl lives 2 miles away. We now see it regularly.
Amazing.
We have a bat. I presume there's 2, but there's definitely one living down the end of the garden. That did not live there last year.
Yeah.
So we have always had birds, and we've always supported that. But now when you look out, you see the seed heads of the grasses, and they're like this because there's like 5 birds on it.
Yeah.
And they just pop up. And it's crazy. And you go out, there's something happening in that garden every day.
I think that's the joy of it, isn't it? Is actually when you give nature that little bit of extra space, it just surprises you, doesn't it? It's you never know, but it does. It grows, it evolves, it changes.
At dusk this year, we got ghost moths, and they are white, and some of the male, I always get this wrong. One of them is white, and then the other sex is this red, and the white ones go like this on the top of, and if you Google it, wasteland, my garden, wasteland, I was like, thanks very much, Google. And they fly like this. So if you went out at dusk in like the end of the summer, it was like this light show of fairies. It's the only way to describe it. These little white Tinkerbell angel-like little things flying. And then the red dude comes along and they're like, we'll just hang out here and meet, which is lovely. But like 6 o'clock, I was like, see you, love. I was out with that torch, I wanted to see this. This is amazing. And then one day I heard this mental noise, and I had seen maybugs or cockatoos. Again, I don't have the right connection. This is all red. This was not my language growing up. So I'd seen 1 or 2, so I was obsessed with finding this maybug. I couldn't find him, and I kind of put it in forums. They're like, too late, love. I was like, no, but what else could it be? A great diving beetle.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God. And you named it Bob and moved him in. He was amazing. He was this side, oh my God, just beautiful. No one else wants it. And that's because I had done ponds and different water. And if you want wildlife in your garden fast, it's water. Don't mow, water in. And ponds are completely addictive.
Yeah.
No fish, ponds. And we built a pond. It needs to be like 10 times bigger by now. And I got an old cattle trough.
Okay.
And I made another one. And then I took down our water tanks because we don't have that system anymore because we decarbonized. And they're not the pretty vintage water tanks. They're the black plastic ones with the copper pipes. And they are now 2 water troughs. And then there was 2 builder's buckets that were ruined with cement. They're now 2 water features.
Oh, wow.
And then I have this natural dip in the garden, which I dug up a little lower, and I filled it with old rugs, old carpets to make it even slower down. And the ducks are doing their job at the moment there to make it really mushy. And when the ducks are moved out of there, water irises are going in there. And that's a bog pond because that's a different type of habitat again. And water native bushes, you're good. You know, like, and people talk about, you know, feeding the birds, and I don't really, a few peanuts because I want to see them, but the seed heads do the job. There's so much seed head. Like, it's just all circular again. Like, yeah, you're out there, you're cutting a bit of grass, or maybe you just don't want nettles right outside your front door, you know, and there's a bit of transplanting, but like, it just all comes so good. It's like it's waiting for you to take that breath, to take that step towards it and embrace it. And that's what I find so exciting. So like, I'm like, you know, outside with a torch going, oh my God, he's gorgeous. And it's a little bug and everyone's looking at me. But like, I was not this person. I remember being given moths 5 years ago. I'm like, I can't touch this. Now I'm like, they're all my friends. I've lost my moth. But it's like, you know, and my mother is looking at me, what are you doing touching it? You know? And I'm like, I know, isn't it fabulous? I'm rubbing it. So it's like, but it you know, it's crazy how it's changed. All it was stop cutting the grass. Maybe I should put in a pond. You know, it was these little thoughts.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Just a little step, like, just like, I mean, I don't, because you're in Ireland, but in the England here, we have one of the wildlife charities do something called No Mow May, which is basically encourages people just, you know, for the 1 month of May to just let their grass grow, and then invariably it sort of rolls on and they get excited and they realize, and it's as simple as that, isn't it? And then not being too excited to clear up as well. Just, you know, embrace the wasteland. And
it is. Like, I was picking fallen apples. We have lovely mature apples here, trees here. I can't use them all, and so I put a crate outside my door with a sign going free apples. And I was picking some fallen apples for the ponies, because when you go on a walk with kids, you know, we feed the ponies. So, and I was like, that's a funny looking leaf. And there I was holding a frog. And I was like, oh God, you know, like, this is crazy. And I was like, we've tadpoles now. This is so exciting, you know. And like, we've had a blue tit in our post box. So we had to put a sign up in our post box going, you know, out of use. And we had put a little camera to see him. And we had a camera, you know, like a security camera, and there were starlings. So the camera got moved slightly so we could see them fledge. You know, we were like the stick one night moving it so we wouldn't touch it, so that we got to see the starlings fledge, you know. So no security, but the starlings were fabulous, you know. So,
well, mate, you have a whole flock of starlings for security now, mate.
We have, yeah. And they can make that fake Carla sound, can't they? So we have like resident fox, pheasants, 2 hedgehogs. We have your
barn owl as well now.
The barn owl who's down the road. I can see his house here, who comes occasionally. We see him kind of, he scopes us out. We have at least 1 bat. We have my missel thrush is back in the last few weeks. Do you know, like, obviously the robins, the wrens, I could actually walk in the garden and tell you where they nest, you know, and it's nuts. It's just nuts. And it's so exciting. It's so exciting. It's so rewarding. And all it took is not cutting the grass. And you know, and if you really need a bit of color, you can plug plant verbena or oxeye daisies, or, you know, and like, I do have a stripware garden, and most of that comes from 3 or 4 friends, and we split plants, so you're not buying plastic, and if we do, we share, you know. And seed sharing, you know, I was telling you, I left apples at my door. I got a knock from someone who said, I really enjoyed your apples all summer. Here's some jam I made for you. I was like, thank you. Wow. You know, to know this person. And there's such a community that can be there in this modern society if we just release what we think and rephrase our own minds a little bit. I think there's an opportunity to be something happier.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? You start by thinking you're growing something for nature, but actually you find you grow yourself in untold ways, don't you? It's just
And my kids last year, they would have went to school a little later, and we used to spend an hour in the garden every morning, and it was just amazing. So we got up 35 minutes earlier to spend time outside. This year they're split. So myself, the child that's much later, we go for a walk down by the river and the forest with the dogs every morning. So it's amazing. So every morning, hail, rain or snow, we get outside. And people are like, before school? I'm like, before school. Yeah. That's what we do. And we're outside, and it could be making mud potions, or it could be sweeping the polytunnel, or it could be going down to the river and throwing stones into the river. It can be, but that was something that came to me last year. I was like, before school, I want them outside.
It sets you up, doesn't it? It's just a beautiful way to start the day, is just to be. And I guess you sort of tap into yourself, don't you? And you feel calmer, and just it sort of heightens so many amazing senses, doesn't it? Like curiosity and observation.
I'm not a calm person, but I'm very high energy, and I suppose a lot of people who do rewilding and stuff seem to be very meditative, and I'm not that personality again. But I can have a tough start in the morning, and 20 minutes outside, half an hour outside, and I'm actually in really good form for the day. Yeah. And it can change your mood. And I've always found that is it can actually center me where I'm quite, my brain is always like this, and it actually focuses me. And I think that's really interesting for me, who's not that typical person that you see, in nature or doing that. I'm actually that bumbling person. I'm quite clumsy. I'm loud. And I'm that antithesis that you associate with it, and yet for me, it's completely centering. I'm not going to say grounding, because the idea with that is that you're very calm, and I'm not very calm. I actually get so much good energy from being outside, and the texture, like just touching grass. And I was talking about the shop we have, and this year, because I do the displays in the shop, every single display has been centered around my garden, where I've cut grasses, I've cut foliage, I've cut dried flowers, and we have designed and themed it around that. So we did a Christmas shop, and yes, there's lights, but the entire thing is brown bracken and rose hips.
Yeah,
that's everywhere. Yeah. So that's our Christmas decoration. It's nothing bought. It's handmade craft and nature.
Yeah, and it's beautiful.
And it's different. And it's just, so if I'm doing a window, I just go out in the garden, I go, oh, that looks beautiful. What if it was just like hung herbs hanging upside down, and we just center the theme around that? And it's the garden that inspires.
Yeah. And it can be simple, isn't it? I think that's really like a theme that's come through while talking to you, is it doesn't have to be complicated. Keep it simple. And I mean, and that's sort of touching on Christmas, and with Christmas coming up, that's something that I've sort of embraced more the last few years, is just making use of the beautiful foliage that's around to and that's again another great way of just reducing your impact on the environment. You're not buying things, you're not creating waste that doesn't once it's you're done with it.
Plants and seeds, and posting envelopes of seeds to people is just actually crazy lovely to receive in the post. It's just really nice, and then you send it on in 2 years' time. It's you're giving it to someone else, and isn't that really nice? So I might go to a neighbor. I go, you remember those daisies you gave me? Well, they're in this county, and this county now, because I split them. And that's lovely. That's really nice. You're digging up, you're sharing. There's no plastic waste. There's no nothing. That's really it's really just nice. It's nice to go, here's a plant. Here's something that's going to actually bring something happy into your life and your home. And like I've said it, like I have. The house is kind of on just shy of an acre, and between the house and stuff, we've a good half acre wilded. But I mean, you don't, like, someone once said to me, it's not a meadow, it's a patch. And I was like, thanks, that's a bit derogatory, so this is my world, and I was like, actually, no, it's a meadow to me, because I get lost in it. And if you get lost in 3 pot plants in your balcony, is that not your patch? Is that not your meadow? Because if you go outside and you rub your hands, and you've got native grasses, or you've got oxeye daisies, or anything that supports wildlife, and you can go outside and you can rub your hand off it, that is your world. That's your meadow, because you can transform yourself. But you're also making a stand, going, well, I don't have a garden, but I have this. Yeah. And it's the same if you do it in your workplace, whether they're relawning something and you go, actually, can we just not do that now? Can we not blow the leaves? Can we not, can can I take over that little strip outside the car park? Can I plant 3 trees there instead? And, people don't care if you're willing to do the work. They're like, brand, you really don't mind.
No, that's the thing, isn't it? It's quite often someone's just relieved someone else is going to take responsibility, aren't they? They're like, oh, it's a job I don't have to do. Crack on.
Exactly. And the other thing I feel that if you're doing these things, there's a bit of a fear or an overhang that you have to prove it's the right decision. And I don't actually, I just think step away from that. Do it because it's a step, that it's a step. It mightn't be 100% right, but that's okay too. But know that it's a step. And
you're moving the needle, aren't you? That's the thing. It's just, you don't have to go from 0 to 100. It could be you get to 0.25 or it's or 1 or 10. It's just doing anything.
And I think you can just open your mind and open other people's minds and open conversations. And I think, look, personally, I think we need to move faster than that, but if everybody moves a little bit, the people who are moving faster because they've been doing it a while will absolutely share, and those little steps will become much faster very quick. And I think, I really think nature is waiting in the wings. I really think it's still, and it's just waiting for us to allow it. And I think we find it hard to relinquish control. And if we relinquish control to it, it'll actually just come. But we have to take that step of stepping back and going, show me what you have, and it will show you, But I think we have to say, we're not in control, but I can manage this. I can help manage it to help it along, but by plug planting or sharing seeds, absolutely. What you can control is you can help others on their journey, but you can't control nature. And once we actually realize that, I think it'll all happen much faster. Those small steps won't seem so small, and small steps don't have to be small steps. They can be a small thing, but a big mental change as well.
I think that sounds like the perfect way to round up, actually, Molly. I think that's just been beautiful. And just remembering that, like, just a small step, however small it feels to you, just do something and then enjoy where the journey takes you.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Fiona, for having me.
Perfect. Thank you, Molly. It's been
appreciate
it's been amazing. Really, really lovely. Thank you so much for listening to the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I truly hope this conversation has brought some hope and inspiration into your life. I would love to have these messages ripple out across the world. So if you can, please share this episode with your friends, leave a review on your favourite podcast player, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I would love to hear from you, so please feel free to connect with me on the links provided in the podcast description. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. But don't forget to simply get out there and enjoy the natural world.